Done draft episodes for years with Pete Smith. I asked Pete, what 3 positions are you confident in the Cleveland Browns will draft in 2024? He will deliver. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB on the LLB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you just continue to grow. I appreciate you all so much. Join the everyday crowd. Subscribe to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. As I said, the Orange and Brown reports, Mr. Pete Smith at _Pete Smith _ in the house. Look, it's been a long time for Pete and I talking Browns NFL drafts. Starting to hit that whole 16 amen corner, if you will, on the 2024 draft set to commence here, about 10 days away to start. Browns first pick, obviously, most likely for the Browns. The action will start on Friday. Pete, now I'm going to ask you to give me, obviously, with each one of these positions, a player and which pick you think it's going to come from. Browns now, actually, let's just get this out of the way here, Pete. With the trade, obviously, last Friday, you bring in, and it's pick 227. Do I think the Browns have belief that they can probably take 6 players in this class that are going to make their roster? No. Browns are really smart. They would always like to kick that pick into the future for maybe where there is an opportunity for a player to make their team, much like last season when they sent a draft, when they took a bad draft pick from the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens went ahead and drafted, I believe it was Andrew Voorhees, injured offensive lineman out of USC. The Browns would like to use these picks and at least basically put the bat in their hands. So by adding a pick here, I don't think it changes anything. I just think that Andrew Berry is just that guy who loves to be able to give himself every option available.
So last year, we went to the draft, and a whole bunch of people thought that they would never be able to fit the 7 picks they made on the roster. They fit 9, when including 2 undrafted free agents. So I don't subscribe to the theory that they can't fit guys on the roster, because if they draft good players will beat out guys that are currently on their roster. Let's throw a weird example out there. If the Browns take a safety day 3, who's essentially competing with D'Anthony Bell,
and Hickman.
Anthony Bell is a decent football player, but I don't think it's like an impossible, a huge lift to beat him out for a spot. And like the same with corner, like right now, corner 6 is Khalif Halasi, and I'm curious to see what he can do, but like, I don't think it's necessarily that big of a challenge. So, we'll see what happens with 227. It's a shot. It could be a trade out. It could be, a trade up. There's all kinds of options you have with it, but ultimately it's a shot at a player. And that's, I think undrafted free agents are going to be a huge part of the Browns strategy with the draft anyway, because it has to be. You only have 5 picks or 6 picks. You sort of have to be folding that in. So it's going to be interesting to see how that one works. Now, full disclosure, when I said wide receiver, offensive tackling, guard, the quote I got back from, gross. But okay.
Well, I think 2 out of 3. I'm just not a huge fan of this interior offensive line class. But look, this wide receiver group. What's up?
Guards are on the team right now, Jeff, that they've cut Prospect X with a failed physical designation. Not that I would do with it.
3. How many played last year? But how many played last year?
They count 4 because they include Dawson Deaton, who's a huge threat to make this roster, by the way. A huge threat. Everybody needs a 4th guard. Everybody needs a 4th guard and a 3rd center, Pete. It's just the way it works. Come on now. Yes. So you're sitting there going, yeah, what do they need? Well, Andy Dickerson, the new offensive line coach, needs dudes to build for the future. And by the time this season gets rolling, the top 3 guards on this team, one of which is Michael Dunn, who has no there's no runway that gets him to be a starter. They're all going to be in their 30s. So you have to start getting younger guys to build that up. So that's why I look at guard, but certainly tackles. I think the Browns I will be shocked if they don't take one in the second or third round. It just, the math sort of works out in a weird way, and we'll see. It could go weird, and fat kids always go first in the draft, so there's always this element of teams just cannot have enough offensive tackles. But the guys that jump out to me that fit, the one that's super unlikely, but we'll see, Kingsley Suamataia from BYU. That's the guy I would look for at that 54th pick, or who knows, maybe they even move up a little bit, but I think that's a dream selection for them. And then the next two guys, more likely in the third round, but you never know, are Blake Fisher from Notre Dame and Karan Amagaji from Yale. Those guys, and
smoke that one.
And with Karan Amagaji, I'm not convinced he's not a guard. Like, he's played both, and he's a little slow-footed. So I wonder if they don't take him and go, hey, we're going to give you every shot to be a tackle, but if it ain't going to work, you're going to be a hell of a guard. And everybody was thrilled with that. Obviously, that is the path Joe Bitonio took, left tackle out of Nevada, where he was damn good, and then moved him to become what is likely to be a Hall of Fame guard. So that's sort of where I'm at on those. I'm obviously a bigger fan of Blake Fisher than most. I can't get over how easy it is for him to bend in his pad level. I understand he has stiff hips, and there's some limitations with that. He's 21. He ain't going to get any smaller. He's just going to get bigger and stronger and figure some stuff out. I think with more development and continued work, he's going to get to be a pretty good lineman. And he's got a lot of experience playing across from Joe Alt. I also think Blake Fisher has the ability to play either offensive tackle spot. And not for nothing, he's been working with Duke Manyweather the offseason, which doesn't hurt my feelings either in terms of just trying to address weaknesses and get him ready to go. But he fits a lot of the things the Browns like in terms of prospects.
And I know for some, and it does seem weird to talk about it like this, because the Browns have three very, very promising tackles, but you have the issue of Jed Wills, obviously last year of his contract, and of course the situation, Jack Conklin, as well as he's played, the injury history, DeJuan Jones, right now everybody's like, well, how in the world are you going to get DeJuan Jones on the field? Oh my God, why would you draft another offensive tackle? But this changes very, very quickly within the next calendar year.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what Jack Conklin's going to be able to do. Like, let's put it this way. If Jack Conklin shows up the week one of the season and he's fully healthy, he's the best tackle on the roster by far. Like, it's not close. Don't tell me DeJuan Jones is a better overall football player than Jack Conklin right now. But I don't know what that is going to look like. I don't know what percentage of Jack Conklin we can get. And, there's obviously a risk he could get hurt again, even though the last injury was a complete fluke. Nobody's surviving that. So it's just a tough spot for him. You hope for the best, because he's a really good player that really ups their run game in addition to giving you a very, very strong run blocker. But I don't know. And we don't even know where, the Browns are at least having conversations about what to do with DeJuan Jones. He may end up staying at right tackle. And if he does, you got to get a backup left tackle for right now, because you're not going to I guess there's certainly a world where had Jed Wills gone down for the season the week one, like Conklin did, that DeJuan Jones would have eventually ended up there. But I think the Browns want to find DeJuan to home one way or the other. And two, whatever that is, they got to get a guy who can eventually be the dude behind, whether it's Jed Wills or Jack Conklin. They've got to start getting that right. They've got to get their cost controls right in terms of the offensive line in general. They're paying 5 guys real money. So there's just a lot there. And again, you don't want to be in the situation where all 3 AFC North teams are right now, where they need draft picks to come in and start. The way college football has gone, very few offensive linemen are ready to play day one. It's just the ball comes out so quick. Pass protection reps aren't very long. You've got to give them time to develop, or you're at severe risk. DeJuan Jones is an outlier in that respect. I hope we don't get spoiled in thinking that's just how it goes. So give Andy Dickerson time to work with whoever these guys are to get them ready for next year.
Look, it's going to change quickly. And, the fact of the matter is, yes, this Browns offensive line is good, but this Browns offensive line is old. And, when you don't have to draft 4 starters, which Cleveland Browns don't, you basically are putting your eyes to, well, all right, well, how can I either A, make this as good as it possibly can be for this year, or B, how can I start peeking back the curtains and making sure that, basically we are ready for the following season. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Pete, want to talk big boys first? I guess we talk big boys first. Wide receivers, we'll go there next. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championship is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Your host, Jeff Lloyd. We are joined by the OBRs, Pete Smith. Make sure you're following @_Pete Smith _ Appreciate everybody who makes the show their first listen every single day. Join the Locked On Browns every day or by subscribing to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. Now, it is such a wide variety wide receiver class, Pete. I mean, you've got your guys who are just great technician or route runners. You've got some great overall physical athletes, big, menacing guys, long arms, strong, 220 pounds. You've got speed. And obviously a lot of names have gone back and forth here, connected to the Browns, what the Browns would be interested in. And there is, for now, when I look at it, is somebody they draft here, is this a guy that's capable of being, a 1 or a 2 in 2025? We don't know that Coop is going to be re-signed. Elijah Moore is obviously a free agent. It's the Browns, I think, are certainly in on wide receiver. The question is, what is the perfect fit for maybe 2024, but the perfect fit for 25, 26, and 27?
Yeah, this is tough because I think unless the Browns, somebody falls to them that they love, I think Troy Franklin might fit in that group.
Dang.
I think that once you get past that, unless that guy's sitting there at 54 and they're going, or they move up a little bit and they go, we have to have this guy, then I think it becomes more of a just sort of taking a swing somewhere that's not going to be like married to the roster for a long time. Because look at it from this standpoint. If the Browns can knock out the offensive line needs that they have where they're going to be good next year, everybody's going to be focusing on that first round pick and going wide receiver. And you should. Like at that point, you then get the ability to go get what you think might be a number 1 or high-end number 2 receiver, as opposed to sort of being in the situation where, you're hoping that one of these guys falls and everybody's going to say, well, it's a historic wide receiver class. They're all historic wide receiver classes other than last year. Last year was like the weakest one, but every other year I'm hearing about how it's a historic wide receiver class. I got news for you. Go watch that kid from Arizona whose name I cannot pronounce, and the kid from Missouri, Luther something, the third, who they're both phenomenal. Like there's going to be dudes at wide receiver next year too, guys you're going to want in the first round. So if they don't get those guys, then like maybe they like a Devontae Walker, maybe they like a Jalen Polk, but I just have a tough time with it. I think you're looking at rounds 5 through 7. And to me, it's more in the realm of like round 7 / after the draft, where you get into guys like Bub Means from Pitt or Jalen Coker from Holy Cross, Anthony Gould, who's a speedy guy from Oregon State, Isaiah Williams from Illinois, Lydetrick Griffin from Mississippi State, another speedster. And then, Mason Tipton, a kid from Yale, who's local. He's from Akron, went to Hoban. I think once you get past those guys, I would love nothing more than Javon Baker to be sitting there if the Browns were to trade down and get an extra 4th round pick, or in some world where he falls to round 5. I just don't see it happening. And I think you're going to get into a situation where you're sort of like, is this all we're getting for this pick? And I think they become kind of forgettable pretty quickly.
And, and that's it. Look, do you really need the bang for the buck here? And it does appear like there are bigger needs. I mean, you look at a nucleus of Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, Jerry Jeudy. Obviously, your expectations are well over 200 receptions. Your expectations are well over 2,500 yards. Your expectations are well over 25 touchdowns. So the question is, are we this married to it now? And keeping in mind, you still have Cedric Tillman, who showed at times last year, the Denver game with DTR, it really looked like he was turning a corner. David Bell, not many cared about, week 19. I'm sorry, week 18, David Bell played really, really well. David Bell responded with 7 receptions in a playoff game. So the question is do you get somebody, that's going to be 5 or 6, or do you get somebody who may already be challenging an Elijah Moore for reps?
Mr. Fourth Down, David Bell, is that who we're talking about? Who also plays a lot of special teams? Like, it's going to be difficult to get him off the roster for that exact reason. And I'm curious to see how this sort of works if we get into a situation where, there's some tiebreakers there. For example, let's say the Browns really like Xavier Leggett from South Carolina, and it's a coin flip between him and Troy Franklin from Oregon. It's not to say that Troy Franklin couldn't play special teams. He just has not played special teams. Xavier Leggett is a dynamic kick returner with a ton of size that could give you some extra bang for your buck. And there may be some decisions that come down to that where they're just looking at, those little extras that they can bring. But we'll see. I mean, that's why I think David Bell is pretty safe. But it's really about wide receiver 6, who may be another guy that they want to dedicate at least some of that responsibility to special teams. But, if they get a guy they love, if Troy Franklin, somebody they love, and he's sitting there at 54, I don't think they'll hesitate. I think they'll work around the roster and figure it out.
So if it does become Troy Franklin, we are all blaming Pete Smith. That is the reason. That's what's going to happen. It's not that I dislike Troy Franklin. I just don't know if I see enough overallness in his game.
Okay.
Oregon, the program, I just, it seems like, the Browns have tried these guys. Oh, well, it's a great vertical threat. But you know what? They've been here. You kind of did it. Look, Goodwin, older, different, of course. It just doesn't seem to be that guy. They can get their guys vertical within their system. It just seems that everything within their passing game has to work, and it's kind of got to work in harmony, work like a band, obviously. So just bringing one guy in, and what's going to happen when you don't want him to run deep, and and what happens on 3rd and 7? Are you going to run Troy Franklin on a post pattern at 176 miles an hour? It's just there's a lot of names, and for me, it's just if it was an ice cream bar, I don't think the Troy Franklin scoop would be the one I would be going for. We're going to continue on here, and the guard class. It is not a great guard class, but the Browns certainly do have a need. We're going to talk about that. Your latest Locked On Browns, segment 3 coming up. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. I've been told I'm a competitive person. If you don't believe me, ask my wife, ask my daughters. Okay, well, yeah, I have a competitive side. We all do. And my competitive side is a big fan of Monopoly Go. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's been downloaded over 150 million times. It's a great twist on Monopoly where you play on not one, but hundreds of Monopoly boards in crazy locations, building up amazing cities that bring you big money. But the best part is messing with my friends. I can charge them rent on my iconic properties just like Classic Monopoly. But now I can also rob their vaults of riches for myself. And the leaderboards show me who the biggest Monopoly tycoon is. But it's not just my competitive side that loves it. You can team up with friends and people all around the world in time tournaments to earn huge rewards. So get in the game and join your friends. Download Monopoly Go now free on the App Store or Google Play. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Mets 3 straight series wins, by the way, guys. Right now, new customers get $50 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on one app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Closing out your latest Locked On Browns, your host, Jeff Lloyd, the OBR's Pete Smith, in for the ride. Appreciate you all who make the show your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, you're a bunch of filthy animals, but you're my filthy animals. Join the filthy animals, subscribing to the Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, similar, Pete, obviously to the offensive tackle room, the guard room, similar situation. And even if it wasn't so much that the guys are getting older and some of them dinged up, you do have a new offensive line coach. This team had the same offensive line coach for 4 years. He is now off to Tennessee. He's going to go work with his son. And it is basically now Andy Dickerson's room. So, of course, it makes sense that, by making it his room, it is his unit. He's going to have a stamp on it. And you're going to start to see the 2024 Cleveland Browns offensive line. But I think for most of the summer, we might start to see what will be the Browns offensive line of 2025 and years going down the road.
Yeah. So if Troy Franklin went to Florida State, I think you'd be a little more excited about him. Instead, you want to
would have never made it. Would have never played. He's not playing.
Power.
He wouldn't have played.
In any case, offensive guard. I think this is a position that makes a whole lot of sense on day 3. Unless they get, Amagaji and they decide he's a guard, or hell, I mean, there is a world where Sua Mataya could be a guard as well. But in terms of getting guys who are just strictly guards, Mason McCormick, he's older than the Browns typically look at, but he's a freaky athlete and he looks like Wyatt Teller on tape, but at left guard, which comes with all the good and bad of Wyatt Teller. Satoa Lamea from Utah is an intriguing guy who does a lot of polling for them, has been pretty good. Brandon Coleman from TCU, awful tape at tackle, but he's physically ridiculous. So it's one of those where you're sitting there going, we'll figure it out. And he's, so we'll see what happens with that. Javion Cohen from Miami's one that's, toolsy, interesting, young. And then you get into the late round guys. Gottlieb Ayedze from Maryland is interesting. Tanner Bortolini, I expect he will be long gone by this point, but I'm lower on him than most because, yes, he's a phenomenal athlete, but he's sawed off. He's got very, very short arms. So I look at him as a guy that's sort of may end up being center only, and I don't know if he's going to be able to do that. Nick Gargulo from South Carolina, Gabe Wallace from Buffalo, CJ Hansen, the second Holy Cross guy I've mentioned today, and Prince Pines from Tulane are all big body guys with athletic traits that can be interesting. And it just becomes about finding the right fit in terms of coaching them, developing them. And it's another situation where you could see somebody come in, and if they don't work, they move on pretty quick, like after a year and then an off season in training camp. But they need to continue to bring in guys to compete. They just need bodies at this point right now. Honestly, I mean, again, we just talked about this. There's 4 guards on the roster. They're not going to have Joel and Wyatt practice every day if they can help it. So they're going to need to get some guys that in there that can rep. There's a lot of these type of guys. And this comes down to identifying good traits, figuring out who these kids are, and then putting them in a system where Andy Dickerson and Roy Ishtvan can coach them up and see if they can't figure out something where these guys are able to contribute and see if they can't, basically find gold in one of these prospects.
And you can tell we're getting closer, folks, because the pronunciations are just flowing out of the mouth of Pete Smith right now. He is on it. He is on it. Pete, just one simple one, and we'll satisfy the Ohio State fans. Marvin Harrison Jr. ends up where?
Whoever takes the first quarter receiver, so I assume pick 4. Whoever's picking 4th, whether that is the team currently slated to pick 4th or the team that trades up to get to 4th. I think Malik Neighbors is phenomenal, but Marvin Harrison is just such an easy evaluation. You know exactly what he is. Sort of AJ Green type receiver, wins in a lot of the same ways. And I think the thing that gets lost with Marvin Harrison Jr., he played most of the last 2 seasons with a very sprained ankle and was still one of the most dynamic players in college football. It's just he's just tremendously talented with everything he can bring to a program. And I like his offseason approach. I think he's setting himself up to have a very good rookie year.
The thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. is it just looks so stupidly easy. Everything just seems to come so easy. And even when they started, with the shovels and the jet sweeps, I mean, it just seems like there's still so much more untapped. So look, it's unfair to ever put a Larry Fitzgerald and AJ Green comp on any player coming to the league. He certainly warrants it. And look, the bloodlines speak for itself. And when you look at this, you say, hey, well, his father was a star player. Does this guy look like a absolutely? And the thing is, he's bigger than his dad. Maybe he's faster than his dad. Nobody's ever going to know. Nobody's ever going to care. Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to be a special, special talent. Got to a bunch of stuff here, Browns related. Big men coming in, offensive tackle, offensive guard, wide receiver. And part of this probably is due to the fact that the class, it's just generally heavier on the offensive side of the ball. So it's probably where a team like the Browns, who don't get to start until 54, maybe that changes, where you can basically dive into the pool and get what you can get. He's Pete Smith, the OBR, and Pete, everybody over there just crushing it as we're closing into April 25th, April 26th, April 27th. My favorite weekend of the calendar year, bar none. Make sure you're checking everything out of the OBR. Make sure you're following Pete Smith @_Pete Smith _. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd. We always appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. If you are not part of the everyday crowd by now, make a new plan, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. Show is always available, always free, wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go, Browns.